So this morning I want to cover world events. A lot of things are happening right now. I mean, it's been happening so fast I haven't hardly been able to keep up with it. What I want to do first is go ahead and go to debka.com, and as you can see by the headlines, there were scuffles between Israel, Lebanon, accusations going back and forth. What appears to have happened is Israel thwarted an imminent drone attack by Iran coming from Iraq and also coming from Lebanon, maybe Lebanon and Syria as well. And of course, because of that, you have headlines like this: the Pentagon denies U.S. forces conducted attacks in Iraq. So this was all, apparently these preparations against Israel were going on under the noses of the U.S. All right, and now there was a report somewhere that, but it was on, was it Press TV? I'm not sure. It was on, no, it wasn't on Press TV. It was on another one, another Arab publication that says that the Pentagon was angry with the Mossad for a botched operation, but I don't believe that the operation was botched. Let's see if I can find it here. Here it is right there. All right, this is on a Sharq al-Awsat. Now, it is an Arab news organization, so you got to take, you got to make sure you understand to have context here. It says U.S. Army was angered with the Israeli intelligence agency, the Mossad, for a failed operation that it carried out in a Middle Eastern country, and which undermined both parties, revealed political sources in Tel Aviv. The Mossad failed because it did not coordinate the operation with U.S. forces deployed in that country, reported the high-ranking official in the Israeli army. Well, of course, since this has an Arab slant to this, I disagree with the premise of it. If the U.S. Army was angry because they weren't notified of this attack on Iranian targets in Iraq, it is because the U.S. Army has been sleeping on the job and got caught with their pants down. And being that the U.S. has some sort of an alliance with Israel, of course the Iraqis are angry now, angry at the U.S. And of course, then you can see in other headlines what I believe it's on the Jerusalem Post. I believe I can find a headline there. Right. Unless it's already too late. I'm telling you, there's so many things going on, I don't even know if I can get to them all in this one. There was a terrorist attack, I should say a suicide bombing, 2 suicide bombings against the Hamas police yesterday. By ISIS members that Hamas had previously locked up, and then they let them loose, and then initially the Palestinians wanted to try to blame Israel. In fact, Sputnik News went and blamed Israel for it, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. So it's already too late for the Oh, here we go. Look here. Palestinian factions in Gaza blame Israel. Look at this. PA for suicide bombings. Can you believe this? Palestinian factions in Gaza blame Israel and the PA for suicide bombings. Crazy. Just crazy, folks. Now let's see here. I still haven't found this particular Pentagon denies U.S. forces conducted attacks in Iraq. Or well, actually, if you really want to know that, maybe this was what I was looking for all along. U.S. Defense Department denied that its forces had conducted the attacks on the PMU militia convoy or recent attacks on ammunition storage facilities in Iraq. A statement released on Monday. Pentagon said, we support oh, here it is, folks. Notice the words carefully. In a statement released Monday, the Pentagon said, we support Iraqi sovereignty and have repeatedly spoken out against any potential actions by exterior actors inciting violence in Iraq. That was a slap in the face against Israel. This statement by the Pentagon. The U.S. was moreover cooperating with Iraqi investigations of the attacks. Iran has been using Iraq, which the United States still occupies to this day, and therefore partly responsible for Iran using Shiite militias, including the PMU, to prepare drone attacks against Israel. And so, the Mossad had to do what the Mossad had to do, and did not notify the Pentagon, because the Pentagon, right here, as you can see, was against it. And why do I keep hearing from leaders of the United States over and over and over again claiming that the United States unequivocally supports Israel, when it's clearly not true? This right here is proof. And proof is in the past. Even when, before President Donald Trump, the most pro-Israel president, Ronald Reagan, during his presidency, I believe it was Iraq was building a nuclear power plant, and the Israelis had to go and knock it out, and the Reagan administration was very angry about it. That's not supporting Israel. That's wavering. Wavering, wavering, wavering. Claiming you support Israel, but then the proof of the pudding is when Israel has to, without permission of the United States, without permission of the United Nations, have to go and defend themselves against future nuke attacks or other kind of attacks. Here, look at this. See this right here? Pence, America will always stand with Israel. Why did he have to go and say that? Because U.S. actions have proven otherwise. Not just in this administration, but in the administration before that, in the administration before that, in the administration before that, in wavering folks. They're saying it, They're saying the right thing, but they're not doing the right thing. And as I pointed out, if the United States were to do the right thing with the power that it has for only a limited time, folks, they would have done everything they possibly could to champion, to promote the new covenant for Israel as written in Jeremiah 30, Jeremiah 31, Hebrews 8, 9, and 10, and Romans 11, verses 25 through 28. And if the U.S. was indeed Israel's friend, the U.S. would not be planning their so-called peace plan that promises the Palestinians $50 to $60 billion and land that does not belong to them if they would only behave themselves. The land does not belong to them whether they behave themselves or not. It doesn't, it's not negotiable. And to offer them a bribe of $50 to $60 billion to just behave themselves is one more proof that the United States of America does not stand with Israel. So, get rid of this. I don't need, hold it. I don't need this anymore. I don't know why in the world they're putting half-naked women on these all the time trying to push this crap. Anyway, I digress. Press TV. Okay, and so we see here Lebanon is threatening to return fire, and of course Benjamin Netanyahu warned them to just be quiet. I don't need this anymore. Now there is another, those of you who have Twitter, and even those of you who don't have Twitter, you can still get this Elent news. It appears to be more up to date in Middle East news and around the world, quite frankly, than any other news site that I've ever seen. So check it out. Of course, there are biases on this, but that's to be expected. All right. I'm going to hold on to this. I don't need this for now. So on Zero Hedge, we see, of course, Zero Hedge seems to be a pro-Trump. Tyler Durden seems to be not pro-Trump, but pro-Russia, I meant. So it has a pro-Russia slant here, but, you know, they produce news too. I don't know any news organization that doesn't have some kind of slant here. Okay, so after Trump leaves France, Macron warns world is living in the end, or living the end of Western hegemony. Now, I wonder what possessed him to come to this conclusion. Well, I don't think any of the things that I have been saying concerning Daniel 2 I don't think he's been reading the Bible. I don't think it's that. Man, still delusional. But his statement sure is prophetic if you're going to read Daniel 2. So I'm going to go ahead and read this, at least part of this article. Having skulked off stage following his joint press conference with President Trump, French President Emmanuel Macron took the opportunity to bash Trump and embrace Putin, presumably after getting permission from Angela Merkel. Now, of course, as you can see right here, this is Tyler Durden adding his opinion. And there's half-truth to this. But anyway, he said, "We are living the end of Western hegemony," Macron told diplomats on Tuesday, pointing to the rise of Beijing and Moscow as signs of a shift on the world scene. The world order is being shaken like never before. It is being shaken because of errors made by the West in certain crises. No, folks. No, Macron. It is being shaken because it was prophesied to happen thousands of years ago in the days of Daniel the prophet. That's the reason. But he can see it coming. He does not know why it's happening, but he can see it coming. Now, if the blind man can see the end coming, then 8 billion other blind people should be able to see it coming too. Think about that. Blaming the United States in the past few years, and not just by the current administration, he said. So a shot clearly aimed at Trump, but we wonder if Macron realizes that he is a part of the West he describes as making errors. That's a good question. I like that. Macron then doubled down, warning that it would be a strategic mistake for Western nations not to change their attitude toward Moscow. I disagree. So he wants to switch allegiance to Moscow, the leader of the Gog-Magog war. I would say that's a wrong move on his part. But of course, if you were to read Ezekiel 39, you would see that Europe would receive equal treatment to the Gog-Magog invaders. So it describes Europe as the coastlands, those who live carelessly on the coastlands of the Mediterranean Sea. And of course, all you've got to do is look at a map of the Mediterranean Sea and you will see which countries live there. Among them, Italy and France. So he obviously does not know the reason for this fall of Western civilization. Now, of course, he says, as artists. Remember, I told you, I said that this Tyler Durden and this particular website are pro-Russian, and they're quoting RT, Russia Times. And as RT noted, Macron's rhetoric toward Moscow has somewhat softened in recent months. I think I've mentioned that nearly a year ago. But anyway, so he's saying pushing Russia away from Europe is a profound strategic mistake. We're either pushing Russia into isolation, which increases tensions, or to ally itself with major powers like China, which would not be in our interest, Macron said, calling a rethinking of relations with Moscow. Otherwise, Europe will be stuck with frozen conflicts and will remain a theater of strategic struggle between the U.S. and Russia, he stressed. You see where this is going. You see where Macron is going here. He is telegraphing his intent, or I should ask a question maybe. Maybe I should not accuse him of doing it. Maybe I should just ask the question, is he signaling his intent to switch from the NATO alliance and follow the example of Turkey into the Russian sphere. Well, it didn't take long for France to do that with Nazi Germany, did it? No, some things never change, and leopards do not change their spots, folks. These choices are impacting the conflicts of the Middle East and elsewhere, making it necessary to rethink military and diplomatic strategies. Well, that's an interesting statement. I hope those of you who are reading this can read between the lines. Ironically, Macron's Putin pandering comments came after U.S. President Trump was bashed by most of Western media for daring to suggest inviting Putin to attend a G7 event next year, making them, of course, hypocrites, which Trump will be hosting. Which is odd because journalists claimed one key G7 dinner was ruined over Trump's insistence that Russia would be vital for discussions. During the seaside meal, French President, Macron, his name, it just reminds me of Antiochus IV. In fact, all of these world leaders are starting to remind me of Antiochus IV. What do I mean by that? Well, let me explain something here. And I'm digressing, folks, but I have to say this now. It'd be one thing if they wouldn't act like it, but these guys, at least two of them, are named this way. But they were all acting like it, including President Donald Trump. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Do you know what that name means? The ruler of the universe, son of the ruler of the universe, Putin. Putin means the way, the light, the road. That's what Putin means. You get it? Emmanuel Macron means Elohim with us. Or as the Christian world says, God with us. Now, I don't really care what Donald Trump means, but I'm done with this anyway. There's something that I have to point out, folks, that really bothers me. Like I said, these guys are acting like they're acting out their names. But there's one who's also acting like this. All I've got to do is type David Allen Root, folks. Look. Oh, Wayne Allen Root. I'm sorry. So, who is Wayne Allen Root? The evangelical Christian Trump quoted to validate his comments on Jews. On Wednesday morning, President Donald Trump quoted a conservative talk show named Wayne Allen Root to defend comments he made the day before that angered many in the Jewish community, that Jews who voted for Democrats should feel a total lack of knowledge or great disloyalty. And I quote, "Thank you to Wayne Allen Root for his very nice words," Trump said before quoting something Root has previously said about the president. President Trump is the greatest president for Jews and for Israel in the history of the world, not just America, but he is the best president for Israel in the history of the world. And the Jewish people in Israel love him like he is the king of Israel. And that, folks, is where he crossed the line. Where Wayne Allen Root crossed the line, right there. All right? They love him like he is a second coming of God, the quote said. Now, whenever any man, I'm not going to just say any man who claims to be a believer, because that would be incorrect. Any man who has this attributed to them must immediately demand a retraction and give glory to Jehovah. It is required. But instead, Donald J. Trump, there is his tweet, folks. He says, and I quote, "Thank you to Wayne Allen Root for the very nice words. President Trump is the greatest president for Jews, for Israel in the history of the world, not just America. He is the best president for Israel in the history of the world, and the Jewish people love him in Israel like he is the King of Israel. They love him like he is the second coming of God. But American Jews don't know him or like him, so he is not only putting himself on equal par with Jehovah, the King of Israel, he's also putting himself on equal par with Israel's Moshiach, Yehoshua, son of David. This is the spirit of Antiochus 4. Number one, as I pointed out in a previous video, no one, no Christian, no one is allowed to mock the Jews for having blinders on. Why? I'll show you. The answer is in Romans 11. And the Christians have been mocking the Jews for being blinded. This is so simple, folks. This is something a first grader can understand. Verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery. He's speaking to the Gentiles. He's speaking to the Romans, folks. Lest you should be wise in your own conceits. That blindness in part is happened to Israel. So do not be wise in your own conceits and point the finger at the Jews because they have blinders on. Do not do this. It is wrong. Paul says, don't do it. Paul says, do not boast against the branches. Right here. Verse 18, boast not against the branches, because if you boast, you don't bear the root, but the root bears you. So what he's saying is, if you're boasting against the branches, you're also boasting against the root. If you boast against the Jews who have blinders on, as the scripture said would happen, you are boasting against their Moshiach. So, what we have here with this retweet from President Donald Trump is double blasphemy and boasting against the root. I pointed this out to some of my Christian friends on social media yesterday, and I got blowback. I got blowback. I was accused of being too dogmatic. So I just fired back and said, well, the guy was saying that Donald Trump has been 100% for Israel and has taken away funds from the Palestinians. And my answer was this: this coming peace plan that Donald Trump, hiding behind Jews, by the way, using Jews as human shields, yes, using Jared Kushner and the other two as human shields, he's doing, plans a $50 to $60 billion payout to the Palestinians and land that does not belong to them if they just behave themselves. If they just behave themselves. That's it. That's bribery. And what I said to this Facebook friend was that such a plan is a spear through the heart of the new covenant as described and prescribed in Jeremiah 30, Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34, Hebrews 8, verses 8 through 12, Hebrews 9, Hebrews 10, and the entirety of Romans 11. What we have here, folks, right here, is boasting against the branches. I was hoping, to be honest with you, I was hoping, and in my older videos you can hear me talking about how I believe that the ships of Tarshish would be on the side of Israel in the coming war. Now I don't even know. How can that be if the leader of the United States is boasting against the branches? This is the most unholy statement that I have seen in years coming from any president of the United States. This is way, way, way beyond anything from any president of the United States I've ever seen. This is insanity. This is the spirit of Antiochus IV. Now, I know that the second Antiochus IV, or the man who Antiochus IV preceded, were the kings of Rome. I understand this. But the President of the United States does not have to follow their example. The only thing that's left now is for him to demand that all the Jews place a statue of him inside every synagogue, and then it will be complete. Then the insanity would be complete, folks. When I saw this, I was dumbfounded. I could not believe my eyes, and I could not believe my ears. That a president of the United States would say something so profane, so blasphemous, So blasphemous, in fact, that a crime lesser than this caused the death of Herod Agrippa. Let's go look that up, folks. No. Voice of a God. Acts 12. Verse 20. And Herod, that would be Herod Agrippa, was highly displeased with them of Tyre and Zidon. So, trying to assuage his anger against them, they came with one accord to him, and having made Blastus the king's chamberlain their friend, they desired peace, because their country was nourished by the king's country. They were nourished by Israel, or by Judea. And upon a set day, Herod arrayed himself in royal apparel, sat on his throne, and made a speech to them. And the people gave a shout, saying, "It is a voice of a God and not a man." What does that word say here? Immediately. 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 In other words, Herod Agrippa was responsible to act immediately, or before immediately. Before immediately. He was required to act even before immediately, because he hesitated. Just because he hesitated, folks. The angel of Jehovah smote him because he did not give Jehovah that glory. And he was eaten with worms and gave up the ghost. Proverbs 16:18. Oh, how Proverbs is full of the word pride, but this one right here tells it all. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. I don't even know where to go from here, except that this is going to be answered. You know, this is not going to go unanswered. So I strongly suggest that everyone who listens to this video, prepare yourself, because it is true. Pride comes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall.